Hey, what's up guys? So I just thought I'd do a really quick video for you guys. I've had a whole bunch of comments lately asking about how I build my trigger and sear mechanism or hammer for my homemade gun. So I went ahead and just drew up two really quick sketches that we'll go over that just show some real simple designs that you could do. One will be a hammer mechanism with a trigger, and the other one will be like a sear for more of like an inline striker fired situation. So anyway, we'll go over those real quick. I'll show you how to build it. Okay guys, so I hope this shows up okay. I just used the paint program on my computer to draw this. I know, super high tech, right? But anyway, so this is just a very simple trigger and hammer mechanism. So I drew this as if you were gonna draw or build like a shotgun, right? So your barrel is just bolted. This would be a bolt holding the barrel onto the stock, as you can see. And so this is just a little firing pin that is kind of floating here in the back. There doesn't really need to be any kind of spring pushing back on it, because when you load the round, it will automatically push it back. So anyway, the blue represents springs. It's up to you to figure out, how stiff of a spring you need for this hammer to come forward hard enough to set the firing pin off. But basically, let me zoom in here real quick, and there we go. Hopefully that'll work okay. So I left a gap right here, as you can see, just so it's easier to distinguish the two separate pieces. Obviously those would be bumped up pretty close to each other. So basically all that happens is when you pull this trigger, the top obviously goes this way because this is your pivot pin, which then allows the sear technically to slip off that trigger, and it allows this to come forward and smack the back of the firing pin. So again, this blue line also represents a spring. It doesn't have to be a very stiff spring at all, because all it's doing is just resetting the trigger. This one you just have to experiment with a little bit and figure out how stiff of a spring you need, again, to have that firing pin set off the primer. So anyway guys, hope that helps. I typically do use this design on rifles because it's just super easy and you have plenty of space to work. I did use this design on that one 410 revolver that I built. So anyway, let's get to the other picture here real quick. Okay, so this is like a striker fired design, I guess. It's still super easy. It's just two pieces. So here's your trigger and here's the sear. Well, I guess, sorry, it's more than two pieces. Just the trigger mechanism is two pieces, and then you basically have your firing pin and the back part of the bolt. This is like a two-piece bolt system. I did build a handgun with this design, and it actually worked really well. So this little square up here, that just represents like where the cutout would be, where you would load your round. So I don't really know how else to do that. So that's all that is. This first section of the bolt, it's basically just a solid piece of bolt, with the exception of the hole drilled through it to allow this firing pin, when it's released, to go ahead and slide through all the way to hit the primer of the round, basically. And really all that's happening is, this is a really simple design, and I really like it because this blue line again represents the spring, and it can be just a very light spring. It doesn't have to be really stiff at all, because all it's doing is when you pull this trigger back, the pivot pin is right here, which means this back section of the trigger is going to go up, which in turn this is the pivot pin for the sear, so when this part of it goes up, obviously this side goes down, dropping the sear and letting this back section of the bolt slam forward, and then obviously allowing that firing pin to come through, hitting the primer. So just I guess to clarify what's going on here, there's around the firing pin, there's just a really light spring that is able to compact down into the back of this bolt area right here. And the only purpose for that is to help a forward, excuse me, help forward assist this first section of bolt, just so it can close in behind this round, just so if you tip the muzzle up, it doesn't, you know, your bullet doesn't just fall out of the chamber. So it actually needs to be a very light spring, because then the spring back here, which is actually functioning as what is, you know, pushing your firing pin forward, it needs to be fairly stiff to overcome this spring and to create enough force to set that primer off. So anyway, again, just a really simple design. Like I said, I built a little pistol with this design, and it actually worked really well. And actually, I guess just a side note, it was pretty cool because once the round does go off, at least in the case of the pistol that I built, the pressure of the round going off actually blows this bolt backwards, and it actually ejected the empty casing, which was kind of cool. So I didn't necessarily intend for that to happen, it just kind of worked out. So, but also with that said, just make sure the back of your gun, if you're just going to use a pin or something, or a threaded end cap to hold this spring, just make sure with whatever caliber you're building in, it's obviously beefy enough to withstand that force of this blowing back. So I would say this is a really good design for, you know, just like a 22, something like that, that doesn't have a ton of, you know, kick, I don't know, whatever, you know what I'm talking about, force getting blown back. So anyway, guys, hope that helps, and thanks for watching. We will see you in the next video.